In armed conflicts, civilians are often caught in the middle. In Syria, the Christian minority is facing just that, with the rebels and the government both trying to win their favor. The rebels say the time for reconciliation is past, and the government is trying to play on fears of an Islamic State if it falls. At this EPP group-led hearing, Christian leaders described the situation their flock is living in. More than 20,000 people have died in a conflict that has sent more than 250,000 people fleeing as refugees.
If you see children, women who are killed before your eyes on the ground, the mother who can't get to her son or daughter, that gives you bitterness. It gives you even more will to destroy that dictatorship.
The EPP group's Elmar Brok is chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. While the international community remains divided on how to bring about regime change, it's important to look toward what comes afterward.
I think it should be made clear that in Syria, also in the new Syria, every ethnic and religious group must have their way to live under their own conditions, and that there must be also especially a chance that Christians have a future in Syria.
While many Christians are outraged by the Assad regime's attacks on urban areas, they've also found relative security in the past under the authoritarian but secular regime. Some fear being marginalized or even targeted as Christian communities in Egypt after Arab Spring.
Many of the Christians are caught up by their fear of the future. So a message for the Christians is to know that the regime, is going to end sooner or later, and they have to be active in making sure that their fears doesn't materialize, rather than sitting out the revolution.
Christians make up some 10% of the country's population of 22 million, a land with a patchwork of ethnic groups. The conflict threatens to turn into an even more devastating civil war. That's why many are calling for international intervention.
I agree to no-fly zone, especially for the increased number of refugees. We would like them to be in their own country rather than guests on our neighboring countries. And also they need weaponry to protect themselves, especially from airplanes, that is bombing cities like Aleppo, Homs, and the suburbs of Damascus.
Others say more weapons would simply result in an even more violent conflict, with no telling in what hands the weapons would fall into. Meanwhile, Russia and China have vetoed tougher sanctions against the Assad regime. As the diplomatic efforts fail, the suffering deepens. At the hearing, at least, the accounts help to make it all more real and to bring home to Europeans the urgency of solving this conflict.